What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to teach you some pre-med study strategies, things that I learned about in medical school that I wish I knew back as a pre-med. It would have made my life a lot easier, it would have made my studying a lot more efficient, and anyways, I'm going to share with you guys those secrets. So the first thing I want to talk about is active versus passive learning. And I'm sure a lot of you have already heard about this. A lot of us tend to do passive learning, but you want to do active learning. It's a lot more effective. The first thing is identifying what's important. When you're reading a textbook or listening to a lecture, actively try to figure out what is important and emphasize that information in your notes. Number two, organize the information. Organize it in a way that you understand, that makes sense to you. Again, this is going to be an active process. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be as easy as just passively reading, but you will reap the rewards and the benefits when it comes to test time. For example, one thing that I did, I would create charts. So even though the textbook or the professor did not necessarily create a chart, let's say I was comparing two different things, I would have a chart, which was an active process to create the chart, find the information, compare the two, and in doing so, just by creating the chart, I already understood the information that much better, and now I also had a tool to review at a later date to really, emphasize it. Number three, memorize it in an active way. I'll get to how to do that later. And four, apply the information. This can be done in a variety of ways. So for your pre-med classes, they often give you practice questions, either in the textbook or with some online services. You can also do quizzes. Sometimes the professor will release last year's quizzes or tests. Those are very useful as well. Now, the first two apply to obtaining the information, and these two are going to apply to reviewing the information. Next, let's talk about the learning environment. This section is very dependent on the individual, so figure out what works best for you. First is the location. Some people like coffee shops or libraries. I preferred my own place. I had my dual screen setup, a comfortable chair, it was always quiet. But figure out what works best for you. Some people tend to get distracted at home. Also, are you studying by yourself or are you studying with other people? I would generally split it 50-50. I found that is what worked best for me. When I was studying with other people, I wasn't as quick as going through the information, but it helped really key in difficult concepts and keep you motivated, keep you sane. So if you do this, keep the group small. With you included, there should only be 2 or 3 people. So have one or two friends join you, but keep it. Don't get any more than that, because when you do, you will lose the benefits of that group studying, and you guys will start to get distracted, talking, having fun. So keep those groups small. This brings in the next point about having a routine versus having novel stimuli. So novel stimuli have been shown to improve recall and retention at later dates, but I find that there's a trade-off between having novel stimuli and maintaining discipline. So if you have a routine, a regular routine where you wake up same time, go to the same place, study at the same time, it's a lot easier to maintain that routine and not procrastinate. Whereas if you have a novel stimuli, you're studying at a new place every day, or you're working with different people, it's harder to get in the groove and to maintain that long term. At least for me. But again, figure out what works best for you. Number 3, obtaining the information. Generally, this is going to be done in 2 ways as a pre-med. The first is lecture, and the second is textbooks. Now when it comes to lecture, I did what most of us do, go to lecture. Professor stands in the front and they read off the PowerPoint. And then we're sitting in the lecture hall, we have our laptops out, we have the PowerPoint open, and same slide, and we're just taking notes in the notes section. I do not think this was a very effective way to learn. A few things to consider. First, should you be writing or should you be typing? Figure out what works best for you. Typing is faster, which sounds great initially, but if you type faster, you can copy verbatim what the professor is saying, which is a very passive process. By writing, you generally write slower, You have to emphasize the important information and organize it. And there have actually been studies showing that writing out notes results in improved recall. Second, are you going to the lecture hall or are you listening to the podcast? A lot of classes now offer podcasts, and for me, this worked best. By going to the lecture hall, there are distinct advantages though. You have a set routine and you're surrounded by other people trying to learn the information. You can ask questions. But on the other hand, a podcast gives you the flexibility to watch whenever you want to make sure you're well rested, you're not sleepy. You can also watch it at increased speed, so 1.5, 2 times speed. That benefits you in 2 ways. One, the lecture is no longer 60 minutes, now it's only 30 to 45 minutes, and also it can help you focus. For me at least, the lecturer could speak too slow sometimes, and this would result in my mind wandering. So by increasing the speed, I was forced to pay attention. But again, figure out what works best for you. The podcast really requires a lot of discipline to stay up to speed, otherwise you will fall behind if you start procrastinating. In that case, stick to the lecture hall. I've seen a lot of people rewatch the lectures, or they'll record with like a recording device in the lecture and then listen to that later. This is a complete waste of time. Do not do it. You can better use your time reviewing the information, organizing it, doing active learning, or going to office hours asking questions. Do not rewatch the lectures. Do not re-listen. That's not a good use of your time. When it comes to textbooks, what I did is just highlight the textbook. I don't think that's the best way to do it. Instead, I think try to make it as active as you can. So I would, highlight the textbook and then come back and just read my highlights before the test. Instead, get your computer out, get a notepad, and summarize in your own words. By doing this, you're identifying the important information and organizing it in a way that you understand, and you'll recall that information much better come test time. All right, now you're ready to review the information. What I did and what I do not recommend you do is I would open up my computer, have my PowerPoint, and I'd review the notes that I wrote in the notes section. And I just do this slide after slide and do this several times to learn the information. This was not a good use of time, and there are much better ways to do this. Some people will do the same thing with a Word document. They'll have, several pages full of notes, and they'll just review every single page. Don't do this either. To memorize, one of the best ways to do this is summarize the information. So take these 3 pages or take your PowerPoint notes and condense them. So let's say you have 3 pages, make it into 1 page. Don't just decrease the font size, don't change the margins. Actually read through it and identify just the important information and organize it in a way that you understand. By doing so, just this process alone will reinforce that material, and now you also have a condensed study resource to review at a later date. Some people also recommend you make an even shorter summary sheet after that. I generally just did 1 iteration, but you can do 2 to figure out what works best for you. The other thing is spaced repetition. This is the most effective way to memorize information. The concept is that if you have, let's say you learned the information on day 0, and these are all the days after. You learn the information on day 0, you review it on day 1, and each time you review it, there's an increasing interval. What this does is it allows you to retain that information in a very efficient manner. Instead of reviewing it every day, you only need to review it right when you're about to forget. So to do this on your own requires a lot of scheduling and is very difficult. What I recommend is a program called Anki. It's a free software for your Mac, PC. I think they might even have it for Linux. And it will also sync with your smartphone. Make your own flashcards using this app and review them daily. By making your own, you're again taking advantage of the active learning process. If you review someone else's, it becomes, you're still doing some of the active recall, but you're losing out on a lot of the benefit of making your own flashcards. Also, doing this daily is key, because if you fall behind, you're not really taking advantage of the spaced repetition, and it defeats the purpose. So what I would do to get these done daily, let's say it's the week before the exam and things are ramping up, I would get my smartphone out when I was waiting in line at a restaurant or getting groceries, waiting in line, or waiting for a friend, and just do a few flashcards then, because even those 5-10 minutes allow you to do several flashcards, which adds up throughout the day. To review a whole lecture, it'll take 20-30 minutes, but to do a few flashcards, you just need a few minutes, and you will still reap all the benefits. Lastly, on test day, make sure you are well rested. Everyone says this, but I cannot emphasize this enough. Many people, including myself, have made the mistake of pulling an all-nighter and not being well rested, thinking that cramming the information is more important. That will actually give you a lower test score than if you are well rested, you have adequate sleep, you ate a good breakfast, and you're ready to go. Because if your mind is able to critically think, that will benefit you more than trying to cram that information when you're tired and you're not going to be able to retain it anyways. So those are the strategies that I learned from med school. I hope you find them useful. Leave your comments or questions down below, and I'll see you in the next video.